Fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests. For this project, prepare, rehearse, and deliver a 5 to 7 minute speech of goodwill for Toastmasters International. Your speech should consist of information on the subject of public speaking, such as tips on how to prepare, conquering jittery nerves, a discussion of history-making speech, or showing how good communications is important in business, yada, 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 yada. I suppose in a bowl of vanilla ice cream kind of way, that's really, really good advice. But I don't want you guys to have a bowl of vanilla ice cream tonight. I want you to have the Godiva Belgian chocolate with raspberry ganache. There's a little bit of difference there. I want to talk to you about not just conquering your fears or learning how to speak in front of people. I want to talk to you about finding your voice. Some of you are in this club to do 10 speeches, get a pen and a certificate. Some of you are here legitimately to try to learn how to communicate better, whether it's at home or in your job, or to just conquer that fear of speaking in front of other people. But some of you here have something to say. Some of you here maybe want to change the world. And those of you are the ones that I'm really going to talk to. What I'm going to do is to give you my 3 tips for communicating with power, for delivering a passionate speech. These are based on my experience and on my observations of other great speeches that I have seen. And these 3 tips start with the first one, which is lower barriers with empathy. A lot of times we see the opposition in people's minds as a wall that we have to attack with a sledgehammer of logic and reason and facts and figures that we will beat down that resistance with. That causes people to entrench. What you really want to do is acknowledge people's fear. Well, hell, you don't want to acknowledge people's fear. You want to open up and embrace it. By embracing someone's fear, you establish commonality with them. By showing people, hey, he gets it. He really gets it. He understands. That makes you what? One of them. That makes you credible. The second thing that you want to do is persuade people with conviction. In a world where people are increasingly disillusioned and cynical, losing faith in their leaders, reading bad things in the headlines every day, when you hear someone with the power of conviction, that power can just be staggering. Now this is from a movie, but I want to give you an example. How many people have seen all the Matrix films? Okay. Morpheus, poor Morpheus, is the only guy that really believes that the one is going to save everything. Everybody, or a lot of people, think he's crazy, but he keeps winning people over. Why? Because he gives all these reasons? Because he argues? Why does he win people over? Because the power of Morpheus's belief is infectious. People see him. He knows this is going to happen. He believes it through every fiber of his soul. The third thing that you need to do is inspire people with passion. Now, that's not the easiest thing to do for all of us. Some of us are timid. Some of us tend to speak more softly. And you have to find your voice in more than one way, because you have to learn how to project more. Some of us are more like Miss Manners. We're restrained. The same proprieties that we observe all the time in our workplace relationships, in our relationships with friends and acquaintances, cause us to put a bridle on our passion. We don't open up that channel to our soul where we reveal our deepest, most intense feelings about things. The same logical approach to constructing a speech that comes from a Toastmasters manual causes us to focus on the rational elements of persuading people rather than appealing to them emotionally. Now let's look at a couple of speeches that are famous and have been critiqued a lot, but I want you to look at each of these 2 speeches from a little different point of view. The first is Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, which is one of the most critiqued speeches in history. But what Martin did to make his conviction and the power of his passion so effective was to talk for 12 minutes about all the bad stuff being handed down to black Americans. Just listen to one example. People really don't pay attention to this. You more often read or hear the recordings of what? The last 5 minutes of the speech, where I have been to the mountaintop. Of course. But how did he build that credibility? By saying things like, in a sense, we have come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note, insofar as persons of color are concerned. Martin wasn't just saying, I understand how you feel. Martin was saying, damn right, I'm mad too. Winston Churchill, June 1940, one of the darkest hours of British history. They had just suffered a calamitous defeat in northern France at Dunkirk. They stranded, left behind hundreds of thousands of French and English soldiers and millions of dollars worth of equipment and arms that the Nazis captured. Winston Churchill addressed the House of Commons in June 1940, and he painted the most bleak, dismal picture that you can imagine. He talked about how the very survival of the British Empire was at stake. The dark road ahead, the sacrifice, the toil. He opened up and embraced that fear, which made it all the more effective when he closed out by saying, we shall not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and the oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. After embracing their fear, he crystallized their resolve by giving this rallying cry, and he won people over the conviction of his defiance. Hey, Adolf! Galvanized an entire nation, and that's the same in Australia, by the way. Now, how do you do this? We all obviously don't feel as strongly and passionately about things as others. But if you've got something to say and you want to change the world, start out by changing minds. You change the world by first changing minds. So when you sit down and prepare your speech, just ask yourself a few simple questions. Who am I when I'm talking about this? Who am I? What am I today? Second thing is, what do I want people to take away from this? And then third would be, what do I want to happen after I give this speech? I know that when I give a speech, the evaluations are nice, little slips of paper are nice, but you know what really means something to me? Susan Bauman comes up to me and says, you know, I gave up eating chicken because of what you said in that speech. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people to say that I made a difference. If you want to do that, I've got 3 words for you. Don't hold back.